When the Minnesota Timberwolves drafted Anthony Edwards with the number 1 overall pick in 2020, the thought at that time was that Edwards was going to be a great player, future all-star potential, a piece you can help build to your core that they already had in Karl and D'Angelo Russell. But while most felt that he was going to be great, he wasn't as hyped as the other number 1 picks that you've seen in the past, like Zion Williamson, who was drafted the year before him, or even as hyped as prospects like Ben Simmons and Andrew Wiggins, who were all touted as the greatest prospects since LeBron James, which has kind of been a common trend lately. But unlike some of these great players that were just mentioned, Anthony Edwards quickly rose to stardom, coming out of the gate in his rookie season, getting better with every passing year, and becoming an all-star in just his 3rd season in the league at the age of 21. But just like every up-and-coming star in the making, as great as it is to be recognized for your accomplishments and putting up big numbers as one of the best players in the NBA, you get to a point where you want to start winning. You want to start seeing sustained success at the highest level to establish and cement your legacy among the NBA's best. And for Anthony Edwards, playing for a team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, who do not have a great history of success, nor do they currently have much in the way of their near future after trading away most of their draft picks in the Rudy Gobert deal, it does put into question a future of Anthony Davis remaining with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I know you're probably thinking, how can you possibly be questioning his future with the team when he just signed a 5-year rookie max contract extension? Well, let me explain why. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like this type of content, be sure to subscribe, and in return I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, after the season Edwards just had with the Timberwolves led the team in scoring, the only player to be named to an all-star game on that roster, he slowly started to become a better two-way player with his increased production on defense. He's arguably the team's best player. I personally think he is already the team's best player, but I also get that Karl technically still this is his team, and the team paid him like he was the best player, but I don't think anyone will deny that Edwards has the most upside and potential on the roster given his age and progression since entering the league just 3 years ago, whereas someone like Karl who is already 27 and in his prime, has probably already started hitting his peak. And if you consider Anthony Edwards to be one of the best players on the roster, the player with the most upside, as a Timberwolves fan, you think, great. Most teams would kill to have a player who has already reached star status by 21, and you've now locked him up under contract for the next 6 seasons since his 5-year deal won't go into effect until the 24-25 season. This is great. This is exactly what you want. Well, not exactly. You see, there are a few problems if you're looking at this from the eyes of Anthony Edwards. One, as they currently stand, the Timberwolves are not that good. They're not a bad team, but they're most certainly not a title contending team. Finished 7th in the Western Conference last season, winning just 2 games above 500. They ended up falling to the 8th seed as they lost their first play-in game and had to be forced to win a game and a winner go home to even make it into the playoffs. And then they got bounced by the Denver Nuggets in the first round. And while yes, I realize Cat was out for most of the season, he only played 29 games in total. They made an in-season trade which moved D'Angelo Russell to the Lakers, and usually in-season trades can sometimes impact team chemistry. The fact of the matter is that this roster has some severe holes as it relates to their overall offense. Very inconsistent team on offense. They turn the ball over at a very high rate, they don't rebound the ball well, and they give up a lot of second chance points and transition baskets. And they commit a lot of unnecessary fouls, specifically Towns. The Wolves were 2nd in the league in fouls committed last season. So that's one. The team isn't that good. And normally that's fine if you're 21 and you have years of your career ahead of you and you see a bright future on the horizon, say a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder or even the Utah Jazz. And that's the second point here. You look at this from Edwards' perspective and you try to envision what the future looks like for this team, both in the near and short term. You've got an aging Rudy Gobert who is still under contract for the next 3 seasons, a max contract where he'll be getting paid $46 million by 2026 when he'll have a player option when he's 33 years old. And since trading for him, he hasn't looked like the same player. Not the same level of player on defense, doesn't fit the system well that they had envisioned with the twin towers of Cat and Gobert together. Karl Towns, yes, still a great player. I still consider him to be an all-star in the league, but at times he's incredibly soft. Complains a lot to the refs when things aren't going his way, commits way too many fouls, is borderline a liability on defense at this point, and even on offense, his shot hasn't been going down as much as it used to. And for Cat, a supermax contract that you gave him, where he'll be getting paid through 2028, where he'll have a player option in the final year of his deal worth $61 million. They still have nearly $200 million in guaranteed money on the books for Karl Towns over the life of the remaining contract. They just gave a pretty sizable contract to Naz Reid as well, which I don't have a problem with. He's a solid player and he's young, but 3 years, $42 million was probably a bit of an overpay when he's probably closer to being worth the mid-level exception. Kyle Anderson, going to be 30. He's on an expiring deal. Jaden McDaniels has been a nice bright spot for them at his young age and becoming one of the better defenders in the NBA, but we'll see if he bounces back after punching the wall and breaking his hand towards the end of the season for the team. So you look at the future of the current roster and what they have available to them in the form of cap space with significant money owed to both Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, as well as now Anthony Edwards. And you also look out further into the future. The Wolves don't have much control over their future first-round picks. They traded away 4 first-round picks, technically 5 if you include Walker Kessler since he was just selected by the Wolves in the 2022 draft before they traded him. 4 of those picks are going to be going to the Jazz in 2023, which was just made, 25, 27, and 29. In between those years, the Jazz also have the right to swap picks with the Wolves in 26. Not only does that limit their ability to add talent to the roster through the draft by bringing in young up-and-coming prospects, but you now don't have control over your picks. It limits your ability to make impactful trades to add star talent to the roster when the soonest first-round pick that you can trade is in 2030. And then finally, and probably most importantly, if I'm Anthony Edwards, I'm taking a look around at this front office and thinking, do these guys really know what they're doing? Yeah, they took a big swing after going to the playoffs and having a decent season, but they took a big swing by going all in on Rudy Gobert, a trade that could quite possibly go down as one of the worst trades in NBA history. Yes, NBA history. I made a whole video on why that's actually the case. But you make a historically bad trade that most GMs wouldn't even think to consider. You gave Karl Anthony Towns a supermax contract, which I get it, you kind of had to, but he's not really worth that. And you look around and say, well, now what? It's a small market team, not a free agency destination. They can't make meaningful trades because of all the draft capital they've expended. And now they have so much guaranteed money on their books between just 3 players, Cat, Gobert, and Edwards, that it's going to limit them when it comes to their cap space and flexibility and even going into the luxury tax, which, given the new CBA rules, teams are disincentivized to spend so much money when they go over that second tax apron. They lose their ability to use their full mid-level exception. So you have to start questioning, does the front office have a plan to build around me if you're Anthony Edwards? Like, I know not everyone is going to agree with me on this, but I think Edwards is the team's new franchise player. He's the best player that you should be building around, not Cat. But are they making the right moves to maximize in building around Edwards? As of right now, no, that's not the case. Doesn't mean they can't make meaningful moves in the future, but based on the trade they made for Rudy Gobert and giving Cat a supermax contract, I have very little confidence in the fact that they'll be able to do so in building a contending team around Anthony Edwards. Now, back to what I mentioned at the top of the video. Why would Edwards leave or request a trade after just signing a max extension? Well, let me be clear. When I say that Edwards will eventually request out of Minneapolis, it doesn't mean that it's going to be now. In fact, he can't be traded for the next 6 months after signing his new deal. I don't think it's going to happen this upcoming season, but between next offseason and the trade deadline of that following season in 24-25, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he asks out. See, what you have to understand, a top-level star player who is up for a contract extension to their rookie scale deal before becoming a restricted free agent has never turned down a max contract extension from the team that drafted them. It's never happened in NBA history since introducing restricted free agency back in the 90s. Every early rookie contract, max contract extension that has been offered to a player has been accepted. You know why? Because for a rookie who is usually on a cheap deal, depending on where they were drafted, they're probably getting paid less than $10 million or maybe slightly more than that. For a young player who is already a star, for them to turn down guaranteed long-term max money, which will pay them well over $35 million, sometimes $40 million per year, to turn that down and say, nah, I'm going to play the last year of my rookie deal and see what I can get on the open market as a free agent, which, mind you, if they want to go to another team, they cannot offer nearly as much as the team that drafted you. So you would potentially be sacrificing money, a ton of guaranteed money, by signing an early max extension, and you also run the risk of getting injured or a really bad season or a severe decline in your play in the last year of your rookie contract, which could impact your overall value as a free agent. So just because Anthony Edwards signed a 5-year max deal that is worth up to $260 million with incentives doesn't mean he's all in and fully committed to the Wolves. No, it's because it's $260 million, and no other team would have been able to offer him close to that amount even next offseason when he would become a free agent. It would be insane for him to decline that, especially when he knows he can always demand a trade later down the line if things are going south, which we've seen players do, like Anthony Davis from the Pelicans. And I wouldn't be shocked if we potentially see that from other players like Zion or Luka Doncic or even LaMelo Ball, who picked up their big paydays, even if they don't see a clear path toward contention. So when you consider all of the factors between where the Wolves currently stand as a team, the future of their team with limited draft capital and cap flexibility, you see a player like Anthony Edwards, who is an up-and-coming rising star who is a fierce competitor in a small market on a mid-team with a bad history when it comes to success. And I think it's a foregone conclusion that Anthony Edwards will ask out of Minnesota in a trade in the next 1 to 2 years. But I would love to hear what you guys think though. Do you think Edwards will grow frustrated and demand a trade at some point? Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.